In 1958, a woman who was expecting was warned by doctors that her kid would be crippled. They told her to end the pregnancy. She said no. That infant grew up to be the most famous blind tenor in the world. But there was a cost to being famous. Andrea Bocelli drank wine at his Tuscan vineyard in 2005 and ended up in the hospital, thinking he had been poisoned. The authorities said it was a hoax. But the worry never went away. Then, in 2020, what he said during lockdown made things worse. He left the nation because the death threats were so bad. A Christmas dinner with family in 2023 that brought out music, wounds that no one realized were there. This is the narrative they didn't tell you. On September 22, 1958, Andrea Bocelli was born in a small town called Leicester. It was a calm rural place where life still progressed slowly after the war and money was always tight. His parents ran a family farm that was 120 hectares big. It made wine, sold machinery, and required everyone to work hard. People couldn't count on electricity every day. Most families made a living by farming, and the Bocellis, music, were no different. Andrea was in that rhythm even when she was a kid. Life was just about harvests, long days, and eating together. People were already questioning his life before he was born. Doctors found out he had congenital glaucoma and told his mother that her kid would probably be blind. They told her to end the pregnancy. Eddie said no. She believed in something more than dread. Years later, she would tell Andrea that it was the right option, and he would always remember what she said. That moment became the quiet source of his power. He always knew he was meant to live, even when the chances were against him. He spent a lot of time in hospitals as a child, getting odd therapies. Doctors did everything they could to save his sight, even things that seem impossible now. In a last-ditch effort to lower the pressure, leeches were put on his eyes. Even though all of that happened, Andrea kept some vision until he was 12. His mother played classical records next to his bed during those nights in the hospital. He felt better when he listened to music. It took the anguish away. Sounds slowly become his safe haven. By the time he was 3, his eyesight had gotten so bad that even basic things were perilous. It was dangerous to go through vineyards. It was tougher for him to run, but his hearing got better. He started to replicate the noises of birds, animals, and music he heard around the house. Family get-togethers were filled with Tuscan folk tunes, and those sounds stuck with him. His thinking filled the gap when his eyes took him away from the outside world. He told himself stories. He thought about locations. Music and imagination came together. 2 years later, his younger brother Alberto was born. They both grew up surrounded by olive trees and, music, vines. People ate together at rustic wooden tables created from scraps of wood from the farm. There was a lot of joking and laughing, and Andrea would often jump atop a bench and sing like it was a stage. Even then, he had a tendency to perform. He started taking piano lessons when he was 6 years old in 1964. He couldn't trust what he saw, so he learned by feeling. Fingers remembered keys, and ears remembered patterns. His mother kept playing records, and Andrea followed the notes by ear. By the time he was 8, he could play the flute and saxophone. Some of his peers made fun of him during school occasions. He was different because of his vision. But he kept going. He was only 14 years old when he entered a singing contest in Vario in 1972 and won with Osolio. That event taught him what music could do. It could take him away from everything else. Then came the time that altered everything. In 1970, during a soccer game, a ball hit his face really hard. The hit caused a cerebral bleed. His last bit of sight went away right away. The doctors tried again. Nothing worked. Andrea became fully blind when she was 12 years old. It was dark all of a sudden. He had to relearn the piano by touch alone. He learned how to read Braille. Every step ached, but music got brighter and brighter. It was the only thing that still felt complete. School got harder. Some of his classmates were cruel to him. They laughed. They talked in whispers. Andrea, music, would sit at the family piano at night, when the home was quiet, and write little songs in secret. Those hours became his safe place. Sounds sprang out of pain. Anger converted into music. He learned how to read music in Braille and started getting better at playing instruments. What started out as a way to stay alive slowly turned into a goal. He went to high school near Pisa in the 1970s. He dictated articles, read books in Braille, and fell in love with books. He would sometimes miss music class to walk around the hills of Tuscany, where he would memorize poems while dealing with his despair. He started studying law at the University of Pisa in 1980. He took the train to work and made money by teaching other blind students. He worked harder than most people, not to show others that music was important to him, but to himself. He sang at piano bars at night in the early 1980s. The locations were harsh, the air was full with smoke, the people were boisterous, and the tips were little. He sung songs like My Way and utilized the money to stay alive and go to school. Those nights changed the way he spoke. They taught him how to read a room and how to connect with an audience. He met Andrea, music, Genzati at one of those piano bars in 1987. She was 17 years old. He was older. People talked, and she paid attention. She helped him read the lyrics, which told him about the world he couldn't see. In June 1992, they got married. She was there for him through the worst years, and even when their marriage ended in 2002, she was always a part of his life through their two sons. Andrea got his law degree in 1986 and worked as a defense lawyer for a short time. It was secure and respectable, but it felt hollow. Something clicked during a case with a street musician. He understood that music was more than simply a part of his life, it was his life. He gave up law and sought the unknown. Everything changed in 1992. Zucchero heard him when he was 34, blind, and singing in piano bars in Florence. Zucchero was looking for a voice to use in a demo of Miser. Andrea sang it once. That was enough. The demo was rough and recorded hurriedly. Andrea followed the spoken instructions because he couldn't read the sheet music. He was scared of the music. Enrique read out loud words of appreciation that were meant for him, which gave him the strength to keep going. When the demo got to Luciano Pavarotti, the music blew everyone away. He said the vocalist was so good that he didn't need him anymore. Miser blew up all throughout Europe. Radio stations aired it over and over again. Andrea stepped out of the shadows and into the light. He made his opera debut as Macduff and McBth at Teatro Verde in Pisa on December 11, 1993. His nerves almost got the best of him. In the middle of the performance, he forgot his lines. Instead of freezing, he leaned into his voice. People in the audience stood up. At that moment, he realized that his voice could get him through anything. That same year, he went on tour in Europe with Zucchero. He sung Miser for 50,000 people in Milan. He never went back to piano bars after that night. He entered the San Remo Music Festival in February 1994 as a nobody. He sang Il Are Como di Essere and got the highest points ever, which won him first place. He fell over cables and hurt his knee while practicing. He sang through the pain. Everyone was shocked by the feeling. His first album came out in November 1995. In just a few weeks, it sold 300,000 copies. Millions more around the world followed. He also played in the White House that year. He sang Time to Say Goodbye with Sarah Brightman in 1996. The song broke records all over Europe and sold more than 12 million copies around the world. A blind youngster from the countryside of Tuscany, and he transformed music forever. In 1998, Andrea Bocelli walked into La Scala in Milan as Rodolfo in Puccini's Labo. This was one of the hardest rooms in opera to perform in. Some commentators thought his tenor sounded too much like pop music for rigid traditionalists and that his manner didn't meet what they expected from a La Scala debut. But the box office conveyed a different tale than the reviews did. There were no tickets left for any of the shows. The show made almost €2 million, which was a lot of money for an opera at that time. People who had never thought about going to La Scala suddenly bought tickets after hearing his recordings, snorts, and the narrative of a blind tenor with a voice that seemed to reach straight to the heart. His presence in that building gently pushed against the boundary that had historically kept classical music and popular music apart. And the success showed that a crossover musician could easily fill a famous opera venue. That energy kept up until 1999, when he put out the album Sono. This album changed the course of his career. It had the prayer and the duet with Celine Dion that would follow him for years. He got 2 Grammy nominations for the song, one for Best New Music Artist and one for Best Pop Collaboration. The nomination for Best New Artist surprised the music industry because it was the first time in 38 years that a classical vocalist had been nominated in that category. For 22 weeks in a run, Sono stayed at the top of the Billboard Classical chart. This was a record for the genre. The prayer won a Golden Globe and was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Original Song. With just 1 album and 1 duet, Bocelli went much beyond the classical world and into household all over the place. It was evident that he was no longer only an opera singer. He was suddenly a real star who crossed over. As he became more famous, more people fought against him. He sang the lead role in Werther at London's Covent Garden in 2000. This time, the criticism was very strong. Some music critics said the event wasn't real opera and that he was dumbing down the art form to appeal to a wider audience. Some people even said that his blindness made it hard for him to understand the visual language of the stage and hindered his performance. Schell, on the other hand, said that his lack of sight did not make his performances worse. It made them sharper. He said that being blind had sharpened his ear and his emotional instinct, and that he lived inside the music in a way that didn't depend on what he could see. The fight made it into the headlines and on TV, and fans and critics started to argue about what opera should be. The controversy around Werther showed that there was a big divide between people who wanted opera to stay the same and people who thought it needed to be more accessible. While that argument was going on in theaters and reviews, he discreetly worked on a different kind of project. He put out Sacred Eris in 2002. Some of it was recorded in the Vatican's Santa Maria Sopra Minerva Basilica. The chapel had a natural echo that made his voice seem fuller on the recordings than any studio could. Sacred Eris went on to sell over 5 million copies around the world, making it the best-selling classical album by a single performer ever. It was the best-selling classical record in 20 countries and received the Brit Award for Album of the Year. Some of the songs on the album were versions of pieces like Maria recorded within the old chapel, and you could feel the space in the sound itself. With the Vatican's help and the album's great success, holy music made its way out of churches and into the hands of people all over the world. He kept looking for new sounds even after that accomplishment. He put out the CD Amore in 2004. It had a flamenco-colored version of Besame Mucho on it. Many classical music enthusiasts were shocked by the combination of Italian voice and Spanish rhythm. Some people said it was brave and new. Some others said it was too close to commercial pop. But the song slowly became one of his favorite songs. He was willing to try new things on the greatest stages. He sang Nessun Dorma and Because We Believe at the closing ceremony of the Turin Winter Olympics in 2006. The play was seen by about 3 billion people throughout the world, making it one of the biggest audiences ever for a classical performance. At that point, he was more than just an Italian singer on a local stage. He was a symbol of Italian music all over the world. There was a tight private regimen behind these public events. Bocelli often argues that an opera singer needs to take care of their voice like an athlete does before a big game. He doesn't consume alcohol before big recordings and concerts. He doesn't eat much. He rests as much as he can. He has also talked about how he doesn't have sex before significant dates since he thinks that all of his energy should go into music expression. He said in interviews that you can't do too much if you want to be the best singer. This discipline over the years helped him keep his sound solid and strong, which led to a career that has lasted for decades. By the time these stories got out, he had already sold more than 80 million recordings. Many fans were shocked to find how rigorous his life was behind the sweet love songs he sang. His influence around the world keeps growing. He was the main act at the Celebrate Africa concert at the Coca-Cola Dome in Johannesburg during the FIFA World Cup in July 2010. About 100,000 admirers jammed the auditorium to hear him sing songs like Time to Say Goodbye, which made some people cry and became a topic of conversation across the world. The concert was shown around the world, and even though there was a lot of competition in the holiday market, his record My Christmas sold more than 3 million copies in the US alone. Once again, he showed that classical and crossover music could not only survive, but even take over locations where pop artists and rock bands generally rule. Years later, in a very different situation, that same mix of bravery and risk showed itself again. In 2020, when Italy was under heavy lockdown, he walked inside an empty Milan cathedral on Easter Sunday for a solo concert dubbed Music for Hope. The city outside was quiet, but millions of people watched the feed from their homes. The event brought in around €4 million for hospitals that are combating the illness. People applauded him for bringing comfort during a dismal spring. Some people were unhappy and believed the event seemed out of place as the number of deaths in the country rose. Later, Bocelli stated that some of the replies made him feel ashamed and hurt, but he also said he was glad to have assisted hospitals. The event illustrated how hard it can be to reconcile art, grief, and public health in a country that is still healing. People all over the world followed his public life, yet his private life changed all the time. After 3 years of courtship, he married Enrique Cenzati in 1990. Their first son, Amos, was born in 1995 via emergency C-section after major problems during the pregnancy. Bocelli cancelled a number of gigs to be with her, which made him realize early on how his work may affect his personal life. In 1997, they had their second son, Matteo. He was playing about 200 concerts a year by the year 2000. Enrique spent long evenings alone making quiet dinners that occasionally went uneaten since he didn't get home. The distance increased slowly, more in their hearts than in their bodies. They broke up in 2002. The divorce music stayed peaceful on the outside. There weren't any big scandals, and Enrique later said more about emotional estrangement than treachery. They still lived in villas next to each other in Tuscany, and Bocelli is claimed to have given roughly €500,000 a year in support so their sons could stay near to both parents. In that same year, a new chapter began. He met 18-year-old Veronica Berti at a party in 2002 when he was 44. Later, she would be both his partner and his boss. They instantly bonded over their love of music and their Tuscan backgrounds. That night, he sang Occhi Defata to her, and she later said that the mood shifted as he sang, as if the room shrank to just the two of them. That night, they moved in together, which led to reports of a forbidden love in the press because they were 25 years apart in age. Their friendship got stronger, even while people were talking. Veronica and music had a daughter named Virginia in 2012. The tiny girl quickly started singing alongside her father on stage. Andrea and Veronica got married on March 21, 2014, in the Montenero Sanctuary in Italy. They have always stated that age has never been the true issue, even with all the attention. They cared more about their common beliefs and love of their land and music than the numbers. Matteo, their middle kid, took his own gradual journey to fame. He was born in 1997 and grew up with his father's stardom hanging over him. He started singing when he was a youngster, but he was too bashful to sing for Andrea. Instead, he sang for his mother. He learned how to play the piano when he was 6 years old. But he didn't want to go straight into opera or pop music because he was afraid that people would compare him to his father at every note. That changed in 2018. He and Andrea recorded the duet Fall on Me when he was 18 years old. The song soon became viral on the internet and was Matteo's first song to be released outside of Italy. Andrea was honest with his son about what he wanted for him and what could go wrong with fame. He told him to keep modest and not to forget that acclaim doesn't last long. Matteo has since sang at big events including the wedding of Kourtney Kardashian and Travis Barker. He has also put out his own CDs, quietly creating a career that is connected to his father but also very much his own. Fans all over the world love their duets, which mix classical and modern pop music. There is a tale behind all of these latter successes that started before Andrea was born. Eddie's mother was pregnant with him in 1958 and had to go to the hospital for appendicitis. The doctors told her that her baby might be born with a disability and told her to abort the pregnancy. Eddie, a staunch Catholic, said no. Andrea was born with congenital glaucoma, and by the time he was 12, he had lost all of his sight. He talked about his mother's choice in public in 2018 and utilized the tale to boost pro-life movements in Italy. Many people who heard the music were moved and thought the story showed how brave his mother was. At the same time, feminist music groups and campaigners said he shouldn't have used a highly personal experience to make a public statement about a hard problem. They said that he didn't care about women's rights or the hard facts of abortion. But for Bocelli, this story is at the heart of who he is. It changes how he talks about music, life, faith, and the stage, and he brings it up a lot in interviews and concerts. There are many more obvious ways that his body has been tested. Near July 2010, just a few days before a big concert, he fell off a horse near Tuscany and broke some ribs. He had to go to the hospital. The doctors instructed him to take it easy. Still, he chose to go through with the show. He bandaged his chest carefully to hide the injuries and went on stage even though he was still in pain. Reporters talked about how determined he was and how hard the show was on his already weak physique. For a lot of fans, the picture of a blind musician standing in pain and refusing to cancel became a symbol of how dedicated he was to music and to the people who paid to hear him. Strange things happened to him as he lived on his Tuscan vineyard. Bocelli lost his sight, but his sense of smell became very strong. This made him a natural at family wine tastings. He added that during one of these tastings in 2005, he observed a weird music smell coming from a bottle and thought something was amiss. He drank wine that he suspected might have been poisoned by jealous competitors, and things got worse. He ended himself in the hospital. Later, officials decided it was a fabrication, but the story circulated swiftly and contributed to his fame. The story illustrated how hard it may be to be famous in a competitive field like Italian wine. And it revealed that having a heightened sensibility can be helpful, but it can also make people more afraid and suspicious. More storms came in 2020. Bocelli's statements on lockdowns in Italy, in addition to the concert inside the Milan Cathedral, caused a lot of anger. He talked about personal freedom and said that severe limits for music were too much, which many people took as a sign to ignore health measures. People were really upset with what he said and posted on social media. Some people said he was inciting behavior that may endanger lives. The criticism was so bad that he got death threats and had to move back to his home in the United States for a while to be safe. The episode illustrated once more how hard it can be for famous people to talk about politics, health, and freedom during a worldwide crisis, and how quickly adoration can turn into rage. There was tension even in his own home. Amos, his oldest son, stopped playing music for a while. Seeing Matteo become a pop star made me feel competitive and distant. Instead, Amos chose to go into business, which did not include stages or microphones. This made a small break in the family. The brothers still saw each other and talked, but there was still something they didn't say. That distance finally started to decrease in 2023, during a private Christmas dinner in Tuscany. The family got together, and the two brothers chatted openly about the stress, expectations, and differences in their lives. That night changed everything. Fans of music heard about their reunion, and Andrea later sent out comments on how important it is for families to stay together. She reminded people that even a renowned family has to deal with jealousy, pride, and hurt. His story had gotten so big by 2025 that it needed its own movie. The documentary Andrea Bocelli, Because I Believe had its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival in September of that year. People viewed material that had never been shown before, including scenes of the soccer accident that he had at age 12, which has been related to the loss of his sight, as well as personal highlights from his Grammy experiences and early days in Tuscany. The movie made roughly $5 million around the world on its first weekend. And, at that time in 2025, it was the highest-grossing music documentary. It had interviews with relatives, co-workers, and old friends, as well as vintage film of him from when he was a kid. It was the perfect time for the film to come out because it was the 30th anniversary of his music career. It was both a celebration and a way for him to deal with the problems he had to face. Critics liked how honest it was about his feelings and how well it showed both the grandeur of his performances and the cost of getting to that level. That year also provided another long-awaited career milestone. Belly won Best Opera Solo Performance at the Grammy Awards on February 25 in Los Angeles for Alebo Aria, which he recorded while living in Napa Valley. The show was recorded live in front of 15,000 spectators and included the same blend of technique and emotion that he always does. He beat well-known musicians like Placido Domingo and Joyce Donato, which made the win even more impressive. This was his first solo Grammy in that category, even though he had been nominated numerous times before. He was 67 years old. His statement of thanks moved the crowd as he acknowledged his family, his music collaborators, and the fans who had supported him for 30 years. His connection to sports around the world kept getting stronger. He sang Nessun Dorma at the FIFA World Cup 2026 final draw in Washington, D.C., on December 5, 2025. He shared the stage with pop artist Robbie Williams. Around 2,000 fans were in the arena, while more than 1 billion people around the world watched the performance. The draw revealed the groups for the expanded 48-team competition. He had already been to 2 World Cup events in 2006 and 2010, so this was his third time at a FIFA tournament. They picked him again since he can talk to individuals from a lot of different countries and cultures. FIFA said during the occasion that it would give $1 million to the Andrea Bocelli Foundation to help pay for music programs for kids. People on social media went crazy, and videos of his performance spread swiftly. His presence made a basic draw song into a cultural event that everyone could enjoy. A little project came along not long before that. He put out a family Christmas single called The Greatest Gift with Matteo and Virginia in November 2025. They recorded it in a Tuscan vineyard, and Virginia sang a solo at the age of 10, which suggests that the Bocelli musical line will not end with her brothers. In its first week on YouTube, the video got 3 million views and became one of the fastest-growing Christmas releases that year. Critics, music, liked how warm the lyrics were and how well the three voices worked together. The family was laughing and partying among the vines in the behind-the-scenes footage, which made the project feel like an invitation into their private world. A small number of vinyl records sold out in less than 48 hours, and the money went to the foundation's work to teach music to kids in poor areas. His financial and humanitarian life is where all of these threads come together. Andrea Bocelli's net worth, music, reached over $100 million by 2025, when he was 67 years old. This was thanks to selling over 90 million recordings, going on global tours, and starting businesses like his premium wine line. But he has said many times that his foundation is the most important element of his legacy. The Andrea Bocelli Foundation helped over 1,000 kids living in extreme poverty in 2025. It also affected about 5,000 people through its arts and education projects. One of its most important projects that year was starting Braille music programs in Haiti, which gave blind pupils new ways to learn and play music. Bocelli went to some of these project sites in person, including a school where kids sang his songs using Braille notation. He got the United Nations Global Humanitarian Award for this achievement in October 2025. The foundation's annual report for that year stated that financing had gone up by 30% compared to 2024, which was confirmation that it was still growing.